All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The hour of 6 p.m. is upon us. So if you'd please stand and join us as we call the meeting to order in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then stand for a moment of silence, please. Madam Clerk, if you take the roll call, please.
Councilmember Kearns.
Here.
Councilmember Mosley.
Here.
Councilmember Motney.
Here.
Councilmember Dannenberger.
Here.
Councilmember Straza.
Here.
Councilmember Hendricks.
Here.
Councilmember Ward.
Here.
Councilmember Lee.
Here.
Councilmember Scott. Here. Mayor Brady.
Here. Thank you. Next, we'll move to the public hearings section of the meeting this evening. To start, we will start with the public hearing of the City of Bloomington's 2025 tax levy as requested by the Finance Department, and ask our Finance Director, Scott Rathburn, to come up, who's already up. So Scott, thank you. If you'd go ahead, please, sir.
Sure. City Manager, Mayor, Council, tonight we have the public hearing for the 2025 tax levy. Tax levy is bring the slides up. There we go. Next slide, please. Jeff put this together, so it's his fault if
Go.
it doesn't work. Next slide, please. There we go. The tax levy is a significant portion of the general fund revenues. However, as you can see by the dollar bill, it's just currently 11% of the total property bill for residents in this taxing district. The property tax levy has been the same for 3 years, so it's really been kind of held flat for 2 years, meaning there have been no adjustments for inflation since 2022. The small chart there on the lower right shows the rate of inflation, total inflation since 2011, around 39% versus the tax levy 17%. So inflation has been about 2 times the levy increases over that same time period. And what we've experienced across the city are significant increases related to inflation. We have some items here specifically impacted by that: utilities, benefits, especially insurance, technology, pensions, and construction, putting some constraints on our operating budget, especially over the last 3 or 4 years when inflation's really been running rampant. Next slide, please. So to help realign those revenues, later on, we'll be proposing the adoption, proposing a $3 million increase, restricting $1 million each to police and fire protection, and $1 million for parks. So $1 million for police protection, $1 million for fire protection, $1 million for parks. This is a 13.44% overall increase. State statute requires we have a truth in taxation hearing for increases over 5%. So that is why we're having this hearing prior to the proposed adoption later on. Next slide, please. And with that, we'll open it up for public comment or questions.
Thank you. And then we'll go ahead and officially start the time at 6:04 p.m. for the public hearing and presentation. At this point, is there anyone who would like to give testimony or ask questions from the public in regards to the tax levy?
Just for the record, there was no one that registered in advance of the meeting.
And there's no one here in public that would like to come forward, apparently. Okay.
Not that I see.
Are there members of the council that would like to ask questions? Member Motney?
Just a point of clarification. I see that we have time set aside for discussion later in the agenda. Is that the appropriate place for us to interact regarding our questions?
If we have a hearing, we're gonna close the hearing. Once we close the hearing, then there's no time for that. So you want to do that during the hearing if you want to ask questions. Is that the question?
So, well,
Being that the hearing's open right now and no one else from the public wants to ask questions, would it not be appropriate for the members of the council to ask?
Your Honor, I would suggest we have that discussion now. Move it to part of the public hearing so that when we close the public hearing's over.
Thank you. Members of the council, Member Motney?
well, just again, a point of clarification on the agenda later, I noticed there was set aside, a material amount of time for that conversation. But your counsel to us now is that we should not have any discussion during the council member discussion that's on the agenda.
So I'm saying if you have questions of the finance director, those questions should be now. If you want to discuss then amongst yourself the testimony that was part of the public hearing during the time when it's scheduled to vote, that's fine.
Okay. Well, I mean, this is our only opportunity to ask questions of the finance director, I take it?
I think that since no one from the public, we could go ahead as members of this body and ask questions of the finance director while he sits before us. If you would like to do so, any member would like to do so.
I'm just,
Member Ward?
thank you. I'm just trying to understand what the concern is. Why not just ask the questions?
Well, again, I want to abide by the rules of hearing versus council discussion, and this was specifically called out for discussion later. That's the reason why I asked the point of clarification.
Sure, for a point of clarification, at the end of our, at the regular agenda, the items that stand before us, you could certainly ask questions at that time if you'd like, but the finance director's here is right now, and I wanted to make the opportunity to all the members to ask any questions right now. And if we feel there's a need for follow-up, we can do that.
And I'll be available and present for the adoption presentation as well to answer
Okay.
questions then.
I mean, I had planned to, have the conversation then, but in light of the few other public hearings that we've had, I think this does mark a change from my notes from the prior years as to how we handled it. But again, I just want to make sure I'm compliant with the expectation.
Well, I don't know what's been done in past years, but I'm affording ample opportunities now for any members who wish outside of the public that's already indicated there is none. So if members want to speak, please do so at this time of our director, and then we can follow up at the very end if there's further questions.
So just to clarify, you're telling us we can ask questions now, or we could ask questions later. Is that right?
Absolutely. The members of the
Thank you.
council can ask questions. Sure.
And Corporation Counsel, I heard something different from you. If it's okay for us to have the discussion later, I'll reserve my questions until then.
I think I said that the discussion later is fine. The asking of questions, this is the public hearing. This is where the evidence that is supposed to be developed is during the public hearing. Once you close the public hearing, you're not going to be able to bring witnesses back unless you reopen the public hearing.
So at this time, if there is not any members of the public or members of the council that wish to ask questions, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And when we get to our regular agenda. Yes, ma'am.
Other inflation. There's going to be taxes raised on Bloomington's citizens, residents.
Well, let's do this. If you want to come before this body and be sworn in to give your testimony, I'd be happy to do that. But that was what I was talking about earlier. If there's anyone in the audience that wish to do that, so please come forward and state your name for the record. And then I believe, Madam Clerk, you have to swear the individual in because we're still in the public testimony part of things, correct?
That is correct. And I just want to clarify, Liz, when we spoke earlier, you had wanted to speak about, at public comment about something different than the truth and taxation hearing.
Right.
Okay, if that's the case, then you'll get an opportunity after this hearing.
Right.
Okay,
She wants to
So
say something now.
you would like to speak about the truth and taxation hearing?
Right. I want to know
Okay,
if he could repeat what he's saying.
will you
Sure.
raise your right hand?
Let me, for the record, make sure that the clerk's going to swear you in that you would like to speak for the public comment, public hearing section of the Truth and Taxation meeting, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's what we'll do.
All right. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Go right ahead.
From what I'm trying to understand, because I was pretty preoccupied, and a lot of the citizens in Bloomington are not here, but he was concise. He said something in regard to the chart. There's not been any raising of the taxes. It's the dollars up there with so much is the percent that we do pay, or is that representing our property values? What are you saying?
So,
Please.
sure, and just in general terms, the tax levy, property tax levy is a significant portion of the revenues for the general fund that provides the funding for police and fire and parks and all those things. It has not increased at all over the last 2 years. And inflation has increased significantly over the last 2 years. So that's why we're proposing kind of an adjustment, a larger adjustment this year to catch up and realign our revenues. The one chart there at the bottom shows that inflation over the last 12 years has been 39% total, and the levy's only gone up, is that 17%? 17%. So that's just another way of looking at it, but we're kind of, a lot of my comments have been recently just about inflation over the last few years, but inflation has been greater than the revenue increase specifically related to property tax levy.
So the levy is looking like we need to muster up in order to keep up.
Right, so the levy is a significant portion of our revenue structure. And if it doesn't increase and expenses keep going up, then we're gonna have an issue with being able to afford what we've been able to afford in the past. So since we've held it flat for a couple of years, we're looking at a $3 million increase to sort of catch up this year.
Okay, thank you.
I do have questions then that I'll go ahead and ask now if that's acceptable. Okay.
Right ahead.
So you use the word significant, representing a significant portion of our general fund and our overall revenues. Can you tell me what that percentage is?
So the tax levy represents about 15% of the total revenues of the general fund. And I'm talking about the total tax levy. So not just $3 million.
Right.
So, and then the property tax levy is 19% of total tax revenues. So if that answers the question, otherwise $3 million increase, as a percentage, excuse me, of total revenues would be less than 3% of the total general fund revenues.
So on my statement, it says a little over 11% this year. Is that correct for the property tax portion
Well,
for the city of Bloomington?
I'm sorry, I was referring to the city of Bloomington's revenue structure. So the 11 cents is the total percentage of the property tax bill. We don't have an exact estimate what the increase will do to the property tax as far as that 11%. It may tweak it up a little bit, but is that your question?
So it's just under 15% of our total revenue. That was kind of the point. When we say significant, that's the percentage of that. And then year to date, it's my understanding from the prior financial updates that we've collected essentially that same amount in additional revenues from the state of Illinois that have been decided at the state that we've been the beneficiaries of. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, but you have to take that in context with how we entered FY26. Last year, when we balanced the budget, we were discussing that there was a $5 to $6 million kind of like hidden deficit in the budget. And we had to push out $3.9 million of equipment. We didn't do a transfer to the capital improvement fund. found about $2.5 million in operating savings to balance the budget. So those dollars, while FY '26 were good because we did that reduction, they're going to fill the hole going forward. And then with this levy increase, it fills the rest of the hole and provides us some opportunity to address some capital projects.
From 2024 to 2025, the total city budget revenues increased from 290 million to 331 million, an increase of 14.3%. Is that correct?
That's probably correct. I don't have that exact number, but I'm referring specifically to the general fund. So the total citywide revenues are going to include the increase for the water rates. So that was a 33% increase year over year. So I think that was roughly $6 million just by itself on a citywide basis.
And speaking of that water rate increase, which was significant, we also made a decision in the last few years to move from CPI to the water, sewer, trash inflation protection in our rate structure. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, which has been substantially more than CPI. It's been 6%, almost 6% these last 2 years, I believe.
4%.
4% for the water, sewer, trash.
Yes.
Okay, and then CPI, just looking back these last few years, just to show that we've got definitely an anomaly, but on average, it hasn't been, I forget the word you used, the out of control. 2018, 2.4, 2019, 1.8, 2020, 1.2, then jumped to 4.7, 8.0, 4.1, last year 2.9, and this year trending to finish at 2.7. Is that roughly correct for CPI?
Yes.
Okay, and then in all of our underlying services, where in 2018, we added 3% year over year compounding to our rate structures that our residents pay, that would be an offset for at least some of that, in that we're already collecting money for increased inflation through those service transactions?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, all right. So that's all my questions that I have right now. So thank you very much.
Any other members of the council?
Forgive me, I do want to ask one more question. You mentioned the contributions to the police and fire pension funds, to the public safety pension funds. What was the actuarially determined contribution over the last 3 years for that fund, for those funds?
I have next year's as well. So next year it's going to be 16.1 million. This current year is 15.7 million. 2025 was 14.7 million. 2024 was 12.3 million. 24 was when we did the increase of the 1.4 million, $700,000 each to police and fire. Our contribution did go down, requirement did go down from the prior year, but we were still short from property tax revenues and utility tax revenues by almost $600,000. So we did contribute less, but we still had to make up the difference, even with the $1.4 million addition from the property taxes that year.
And when you say you're going to contribute 1 million each of those two funds, is that in addition to the actuarially required contribution?
The plan and the way it's outlined in the levy documents is that the million is going to go to police protection and fire protection, not the pension funds. So that's what we had discussed and presented. So that's just going to offset the operating costs for police and fire. The city will still be making up the difference for the pension funds, just out of the extra revenues that you described, like sales tax revenues, et cetera.
As we have done in the past.
Yes.
Right. Thank you.
Any other members of the council with questions?
Just for sake of clarity, in case there were other people that weren't sure what that term meant, but CPI, we're talking about Consumer Price Index. Okay.
Right, and there
Well,
are
like-
various indexes that are, and so the one that was referenced more closely or matches the increases in water, sewer, and garbage increases. So different industries are impacted differently depending on inflationary.
It was Member Kearns and Member Mosley now.
Yeah, Scott, thanks for this hearing as well. I just have a few brief questions for you. And so I know we've been flat for quite a few years now, for a few years now. Can you talk, I mean, from your line items that you kind of approach, not from a business term, what were our services impacted to a degree that you had to tap into any other funds, or we just have to get creative in different departments to continue to offer some degree of service?
Yeah, for 26, I ran through the scenario that we went through during the FY 26 balancing. We were looking at that time, the, potential grocery tax reduction, et cetera. But with some of the increases, speaking of public safety pensions, no blame or anything, but they had gone up significantly a couple of years ago. We'd switched actuaries, and so that was like a $3 million increase that drove a lot of our challenges. So for FY 26, operating reductions of about 2.5 million, including attrition, staff attrition, very actively and rigorously reviewing every opening that comes up for FTEs. Finance, we've gone down 3 staff. So that was a component of the reductions. And then pushing out $3.9 million of equipment requests. Sorry, I'm being redundant. And then kind of delaying some transfers to the capital improvement fund. And part of that was just get visibility on the economy, get visibility on PPRT. I've talked a lot about that because that went from 6.4 million down to, 2 million, it's a $4 million reduction. Hopefully the state, will be, discontinue the clawback and give us some visibility on the process improvement initiatives and visibility on our attrition initiative as well. And so, that's how we entered 26 and some of the activities we executed. We met with all the departments. I'm kind of rehashing FY 26 if that's okay, but finance, we review historical, we review the ask, we review it the prior year budget. We do our reductions and we meet with the departments with administration. And then that's where we came up with a lot of those reductions for the current year.
And I guess it's safe to say then that what you're proposing for this levy increase compared to the past, it's not to add additional services, right? It's really just to better maintain our ability to account for the services that we're responsible for, that you've kind of had to kind of pull in since we were staying flat for the past couple of years.
Yeah, that is correct. And, I did mention the grocery tax. So, and being transparent about that, there was an amendment, or I don't know if it was an amendment, but to utilize grocery tax for infrastructure, possibly including streets. So it provides flexibility to address that need as well, that infrastructure need that has been communicated.
Okay, thank you.
Member Motney?
So I believe you've referenced a figure before, but I want to make sure I'm clear about it. I think there was an estimate given as to the actual gross EAV increases that are attributed to actual economic development, new business growth, new residential construction, as opposed to placing this distributed across our overall taxpayer base, which, as we know, does impact affordable housing, which is a key concern in this community. So would you mind sharing of that, roughly 268 million increase? How much of that is net growth in commercial and residential development, as opposed to someone whose property value simply increased on paper? And, the backdrop of that is generally less than 3% of people actually sell their homes annually. So that increase significantly impacts people and their pocketbooks who have to pay for the tax on that when they have no mechanism to realize the gain on their property value, which could, and in some areas is starting to decline.
I don't have the numbers, but I'll put it this way. On the exhibit that I get from the county, the increase related to growth was immaterial compared to the rest of it. So being completely transparent, there was increases across the board. There was a multiplier applied by the county assessor, basically to all properties. So, not to speak for the city manager, but there was an exhibit when we did the estimate that showed, it basically assumed everybody's properties went up. So it showed the fair market value of a $200,000 house going up to almost 8% to the 215.6. So trying to highlight that, yes, we agree, you know, that it is going to impact almost every household, and then tried to show a monthly increase that would be borne by those residents.
Has there been any effort to carve out and understand analytically what really has been the growth in our community from an economic development standpoint, notwithstanding just property values have increased, new construction, new businesses entering our marketplace, and so forth? And if we don't do that, I hope we'll start doing that in the future. I think that would be an important data point for us to all be aware of.
Yeah, I have, that's data I need to get from, the city needs to get from the assessor's office. I'm not sure it's quite available yet. Last year was, I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, was the first year I requested that. The impact versus the entire EAV at that point was somewhat immaterial as well. But yes, noted on.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members with questions? Finance Director. Is there any members from the public that have come in that I may have missed that wish to give comment or testimony? If not, then I'll proceed to close the public hearing at 6:27 p.m. Today's date, December the 15th, and then we will move to public comment. Is there public comment, Madam Clerk?
We received no emailed public comment. We do have one person registered to speak. That is Liz Pierce. And she can go ahead and come up front as you read your statement.
Thank you. And just a reminder that public comment is an opportunity for speakers to provide their views and feedback to the city council. It's also an opportunity for the city council to listen and hear diverse points of view to maximize the impact of public comment and show respect for the expression of all viewers and speakers, should maintain stability and focus on city issues and be respectful of the 3-minute limit. Thank you. Go right ahead, please.
So I had an opportunity of finally coming back to Illinois 14 years ago. I had been here where they have something like a rage room or something, where that little bit down, I actually was a cordboard operator, early 70s, teacher in the pre-med, some theater, Malkovich, etc. But when I came and finally bought a house, it was, I just ran into, still hearing from the couple professors in Missouri. One was poli-sci, an attorney, and he had me through the history professor say to a couple houses near me, it's not tenable to eat, sleep, work, carry on your life. Now, I didn't come here and say that to you so clearly. And basically, it's 11 years. It's every 24 hours. And I just lost one of the professors. I lost a professor friend here who worked on the 300-mile road, who was originally out of Oklahoma. So I'm in a little bit of grief. There's basically, I had even been scammed. I'm grateful for this gentleman saying all this now. It brings a perspective to why you're all here. And if a lot of us in Bloomington could be here, there's a lot to running a city. But essentially, there's some individuals around me who are intrusive, aggressive, and what they do actually hurts my body enough to where my cat moans like 3 times last night. They will, like, aren't you as a human being going to do something? And basically that's why I'm here. They really hurt my body. They hurt the cat. And I want to know questions I should be asking. I want to know where I should go to ask questions, because there's different aspects of this. And it's great to see you guys again. I mean, I'm really impressed with Motley. I hope I can get up and running ever again. I'm sure Professor would want me to. But thank you for being able to come here. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other individuals for public comment?
There's no further public comment.
Okay. Then we'll move on to the consent agenda for this evening's meeting. And under item 7, the consent agenda. Are there any members that wish to pull items from that consent agenda for further discussion at this time? Seeing none, then we'll move for a vote on the consent agenda items this evening.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
By Member Hendricks and seconded by Member Straza. Thank you.
I can just call it real quick. Councilmember Kearns, how do you wish to vote?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Then we'll move on to our regular agenda items this evening. And the first under number 8, letter A is consideration and action of the ordinance levying taxes for the city of Bloomington and McLean County, Illinois for the fiscal year beginning May 1st of 2025 and ending in April 30th of 2026. And I would ask our city manager, Mr. Jurgens, to set up the topic and introduce the other speaker.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and I'll work with our Finance Director, Scott Rathbun, to go through this and answer any additional questions that the council may have. If you could go ahead and pull the presentation up. Next slide. Just going to run through a quick refresher, not going to go into the level of detail that we went through when we set the estimate. But as the Finance Director said, you know, this is of the total property tax bill that the taxpayers pay. The city of Bloomington is about 11% of that, or 11 cents on the dollar. Hard to predict where we go after this, but looking at all the other estimates and approvals that have been set, maybe we go up to 12 cents. We'll see where we land on that. Next slide. Again, we showed at the last presentation our rate history and started to take really a pretty significant dive down on setting our tax levy rate. And we have not increased our rate since 2022, as the Finance Director said. The second graph up there just shows what the dollars are in real time, and indicates again that while inflation and our costs are going up significantly, our rate has stayed steady. Next slide. And why that is important is because this is our second largest tax revenue. It is 19% of the total taxes, as the Finance Director mentioned. So it is a major revenue. We do not have any policies that adjust this with inflation or anything else. A lot of public bodies do have policies where they will adjust the property tax rate based on a variety of factors. In Bloomington, we don't. That is something I wouldn't suggest we consider it tonight, but that could be something that the council considers in the future. We actually have a system we put in place to get suggestions for process improvements in the city. And one of the suggestions that came forward was, why don't you do this incrementally or maybe with inflation, as opposed to doing a large increase, you know, all at once? And I think that's one thing that we would definitely propose that the council look at that in the future. Next slide. Again, we benchmark our rate against other communities in the region, and ours is very low and competitive compared to other communities. Next slide. Want to just take a second to talk a little bit about the cuts and the reductions that we have made. And Finance Director Rathbun talked a little bit about this. In the last budget, we cut $2.5 million. Just a couple of the highlights out of there is reducing FTEs by 700,000, cutting supplies 370,000, cutting training, professional development over 100,000. We delayed equipment purchases, so we reprioritized and delayed a lot of equipment purchases in the amount of 4 million. And then, as he mentioned, we reduced our transfer to the capital improvement fund by 2.5 million. When you look at the staffing cuts that we made through attrition, you can see the various departments that were impacted by that, with finance being cut at the highest level of 12%. But everybody from parks to HR to IT, development services and engineering being involved in those attrition cuts. Next slide. So tonight, the proposed tax levy, it would inch our rate back up a little bit. It would still be a little bit under what it was in 23 at the 0.95, but not as high as it has been in the past, and certainly not as high as it was back in 22, but it gets the rate a little bit higher and would add $3 million, as Director Rathman said. We would add $1 million to fire protection, police protection, and parks. We looked at some of the data and some of the graphs at the last meeting where we were showing the very little contribution these funds were receiving from the property tax. Next slide. Just real quick, again, talking about the why. Again, a big part of this story is just how much costs have increased, how much, even beyond inflation that we're seeing with a lot of our costs that we're dealing with. Again, we have kept the rate flat, no increase since 2022, despite those raising costs. This is going to help us sustain some of the core services that we're providing in terms of police, fire, and parks. And it's also going to put us in a capacity to really address some of the long deferred infrastructure needs that are across the community and really strengthen our financial stability to meet some of those demands. Next slide. And so with that, the staff recommendation is to approve as presented, but we're happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
Thank you. Questions from members of the council? Member Monty?
I just have comments. I don't think I have
Comments?
any additional questions. So in Illinois, we already hold the #1 or #2 place for property taxes in the US, between us and the state of New Jersey. I happened to relocate here many years ago from California and bought a home here that was materially less than where I lived before. And I actually paid 3 times more in property taxes than I did in the state of California. And of course, the increases impact everyone. They impact people at all income levels in this community, and they also impact our businesses. And granted, when you open your bill and you see this dollar sliced up and it talks about the pie chart of where revenue goes, in 2021, when I first joined the council, I made this comment, and I want to reiterate this comment. I believe that all of the taxing bodies need to get together and develop a point of view on how much collectively our residents and our businesses can endure. The cost of taxation, especially property taxation in the state of Illinois, is cited as the #1 reason for our out-migration. I hear from residents about this consistently. When you look at the number of retirees in this community, and we're fortunate in the sense that, at least for now, retirement income isn't taxed. However, unlike most public sector pensions, if you're a retiree from State Farm or another private entity who was grandfathered in and had an actual pension, they never increase. There is no year-over-year CPI or inflation guard in those. It's the amount when you walked out that you were eligible to receive. So just going over the high-level message points, I believe we already charge our residents for many of these inflationary references. And those inflationary items also impact our residents, but our residents can't go to their bosses or to their customers, if they're a business, and say, I need more money in this regard. We need to learn how to be more fiscally responsible, to live within our financial means in empathy to those around us. I appreciate the program for continuous improvement. The improvement ideation event that led to a discussion about how to make it less painful that we're raising taxes seems inconsistent with what my view of a continuous improvement program would be, which is how do we focus our time engaging and empowering the staff of the city to figure out how to improve how their work gets done so that we can gain scale and actually reduce the cost of service delivery. And I believe that is not only possible, it's happening in many communities across the country. So trash and sewer fees have increased approximately 12% in the past 2 years. Water rates, according to a WGLT article, have doubled over the past 3 years. That was noted recently. We recently improved the 1% grocery tax. Sales taxes have increased over 36% since 2021 in terms of our revenue from sales taxes. And now we have an additional 1% imposed on our residents here as a result of the school referendum. And again, I just bring that up because I do think it would be a benefit, because we serve a common population, for the various taxing bodies to get together and develop a point of view on this, because all throughout this community, other taxing bodies are looking at their sliver and they're saying, it's just $140 or whatever that number is. But when you put that whole thing up together, it's significant. And we've had people come to this podium to share their inability to stay in this community because of their budgets, not considering the extent to which we would continue to raise their property taxes. Again, just looking at the year-over-year increases and how the staffing numbers have come up and come down and come up, but they're still materially higher than they were a number of years ago. So when we say we've saved this position through attrition or whatever, I think, again, it needs to be placed in context of the trending, which should be laid out over a number of years so that we aren't just looking at intensified comparisons over a 3-year period where we took one minor part of our revenue and we kept it. We didn't decrease it. We just kept it flat for a period of time. All the while, the other revenue increases that we've had more than made up for that. So I appreciate you sharing your point of view. I see it differently. I don't think there would be any impact to our service levels for keeping this tax levy flat.
Other members, comments? Member Hendricks.
Yeah, I'll keep my comments brief in case some of my colleagues want to say anything also. But I just want to say I appreciate city staff for the work that you've done on this. We have had 2 years of flattening our rate, so not recognizing that economic increase that we saw throughout the community. 2 years ago, I voted against flattening that. Last year, I very much voted to, and maybe led a little bit of the charge to flatten that rate. Because what I think that we're all doing is this is never an easy vote. We're trying to make tough decisions in tough times, but we're only one piece of that puzzle, and trying to continue to provide the services that residents of Bloomington expect and that we've always been able to provide. City staff has done a fantastic job of trying to find areas to cut, to try to find areas to reduce, to try to become more efficient. I see that. I think many of us see that. And I think residents understand that too. I think you have taken the empathetic approach of realizing that we can't go up to the rate that we used to have, realizing that we need additional funds, but also trying to recognize the implications that it has to our community as well and to the residents within our community. So I appreciate the work that you've done. I'd make a motion to approve this item.
Second.
Before we act on the motion, we'll go ahead and take comment.
Okay, great. I was just going to say, I appreciate the presentation and the discussions we've been having about this topic. I think most important is about us being able to put the finance director in a position of stability. that we truly can speak to the different components and services of our general, that's coming from our general funds. And I know it's been 2+ years now of holding the tax levy flat. And I think when we look at the numbers too, right, we have to look at the cuts that the city has made to their staff. And those are direct services. And I think we, in our position, have to be out talking to those that live in our wards about the services that we offer. Look at this past weekend, you know, with our snow removal, right? It was phenomenal. And the fact that we were able to do that with less people. And I think about what we're going to have to do moving forward to be able to support the infrastructure, refine the infrastructure that we've kind of neglected, meet some of the obligations that we've kind of committed to. And I think that this is just a small percentage, and it's small can be subjective, but it's small in not taking us back to, as this city manager said, to where we were before. But it's incremental. And when we look at this, compared to the past, 22 million is 25 million, right? I think it's going to be substantial, but that's not going to bring back those $700,000 worth of resources that we had as city staff. It's also not going to bring back some of the IT obligations that we're going to have moving forward, because those threats are going to continue to increase. And so I'm going to support this. And I think that right now it's going to be sustainable to provide us some cushion, I hope, towards the general fund. But there may be opportunity that we may need to revisit this in the future too, and truly look at the dollars and cents and where they add up.
Thank you. Member Straza.
Yes, I want to say thank you to the staff for putting this together. It's not an easy job to come up with these numbers. It's very complicated. The public, all of us, always trying to understand what the levy, what the taxes implication is. One of the things I've been thinking about for a while and looking at is some of these increases that we've had from water to sewer to everything. Me personally, I feel like some of it has been because we have deferred way too many years, too many decades, too many decisions that were made. We have some infrastructure in this community that is very old, over 100 some years old. And we deferred it from way back from most of us were even involved on council, on staff, anything. And that's the thing, is we're paying for that now. And I don't want to continue to defer and pay for it later. I know we need to be responsible. We need to make sure we make cuts. I don't think we're just saying, please don't do any cuts. This isn't like raise the money and then we're going to not make any cuts, or look at where we can trim out some things for this next fiscal year. So I encourage us to continue to look at that, where we can trim back some of the numbers. But I look at it as we cannot continue to defer equipment, infrastructure that we have been doing for over the last 10, 20 years, and now we're paying for it. That's why the water bills are as high as they are. This isn't because it came out of nowhere. Yes, there's inflation, there's costs that go up, but some of this stuff was because we were slow to react to something that was not done a long time ago. So I don't want to do that. We need to figure this out. We need to continue to find, like Councilmember Montney said, we need to continue to work as a team. We need to work at all the other entities and figure this out, because this is not going to go away. We cannot continue to rise this, but we also need to make sure we take care of what we have right now. Thanks.
Member Montney.
Yes, so I'm not connecting the deferred maintenance to this decision today, because we've made choices as a council over these last few years as to how we've spent money, and those choices, many of which I did not agree with. For example, I've shared for years the statistic that we're only touching pavement once every 50 years on average, according to our own rating system and spend, when the average life of that pavement is half that. So the need to aggregate our deferred maintenance cost and understand that is something that I have been advocating for a long time. But if you look at our spending trends over the last few years, it's not because we have actively kicked the can on maintenance in terms of our rationale for increases and things like that. Again, I just want to put that out there, because my vote, which is obvious, I'm sure, to everyone in this room, has absolutely nothing to do with being irresponsible in terms of spending money to improve the long-term decision-making in infrastructure for the betterment of our community for generations to come.
Member Lee.
Yeah, I'll echo what Ms. Motney just said. It's ultimately the decisions that we've made that has led us here. And I want everyone here to let's think long about who we represent sitting up here. I have heard constituents come and talk about the increase in our taxes, and especially those who are retired. They are on a fixed income. I spoke recently with the Dunraven HOA. A lot of them are retirees, and in the future they're getting to the point where they can't afford their homes because of, or can't afford to live where they're currently living with these increases. And like Sheila said, they can't go back to whoever uh, provides them with their pensions and ask for more funding. That's just not reality. So I just want everyone here to think long and hard as they put this vote. Who are you representing? Who elected you to be on the seat? And who are you ultimately answering to?
Any other members, comments? Just to all the points here, it gets down to prioritizing and spending. And I think that we'll all be looking at that, prioritizing and spending with the revenue that we're bringing in. So we'll stay focused on that hopefully in 2026. With that, Member Hendricks had a motion on the floor, so we'll need a second. Second, Member Mosley and Clerk.
The item passes. There's 2 nays to announce, Councilmember Motney and Councilmember Lee.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to item B, consideration and action on an ordinance levying taxes for the City of Bloomington Public Library. And City Manager Jurgens will describe.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to turn this directly over to our Library Director, Jeannie Hamilton.
And I have with me the Library Board President, Katrina Parker, as well. Next slide, please. So just a lot of this is an overview from the November meeting, but the library is approximately 4% of the total property tax. Next slide. And our proposed tax rate will be lower than it was before the addition of the building bond repayment. So we are pleased to share that. Next slide. Property taxes are the primary revenue source for the library at 85%. Next slide. And benchmarking, the library is the lowest property tax when compared to our peer groups, libraries of similar size in Central Illinois. Next slide. And then I want to point out that the library board has decided to use some of its capital reserves to reduce the amount taxed for the bond repayment, and that results in only a 1.94% increase in the dollar amount levied, and it's a 5.51% reduction in the tax rate. Next slide. And I'll open up for discussion.
Questions of the director? Member Ward?
I don't have any questions.
Comments?
I-
Comments?
Well, I was going to make a motion, but
Okay.
I'll wait until others.
Yeah,
say
we have
questions.
comments from other members. Member Motney?
Yeah, so no, I really appreciated your update, on the provisional. I supported this. One of the things that I'm interested to learn more about is it looks like you guys are doing a very nice job managing your cost structure, and you're actually this year apparently materially under budget. So I'm just wondering, in light of that, do you really need this increase? And what was the thought process associated with that? And again, your key statistics, I think many of them you shared previously. It looks like certainly participation, particularly in the civic spaces, has gone up significantly. It looks like maybe, circulation is on the decline. It sounds like that's a trend perhaps across all libraries. So the whole relevance of the library, I think, is something that you've worked hard to reposition. And it sounds like, that's been successful in terms of the public attending. But in that sense, too, probably some of the costs associated with circulatory items might be decreasing. But just interested, I was surprised when I went back to look at your financials to see, and maybe that's because there has been, I think, maybe 30+% tax increases for the library sliver these last few years. But something looked really bright in that you were performing much better expense-wise than what you had projected, it looked like.
Yeah, so last year was our first full year in the building, I believe, or I think partial. There was 1 month less than a full year last fiscal year. So it was hard to gauge. We did save some money because we were very conservative in what we spent. And then at this point in the year, it is, I'm sure you can understand, hard to project because we're halfway through the year. Things come in at different times of the year. I do think that it is necessary to request these funds for our budget. We did just this summer approve a union contract, so we're able to forecast those salary projections pretty accurately, whereas last year, again, we were in the middle of negotiations, so we didn't know what our salary budget would be. We are seeing a lot of use in the facilities. So some of our like janitorial supplies and things like that are things that are important for us to keep an eye on. And we are trying to save money, finding different suppliers for things. But I really do think that we are asking for a minimum amount and the amount that is appropriate for what we need. And we certainly will keep an eye on those trends and make sure that we are not asking for too much. It's challenging to predict everything, but we are seeing the same things that the city are seeing, increases in health insurance, liability insurance. So we try to predict as best as we can without putting ourselves in a bind.
Well, it looked like in your projections, again, that you guys, had laid out what your expectations were and you were coming in. I can't cite the percentage, but perhaps the percentage under budget that you are at this point through. And the budget currently being on last year's levy and this year's levy increasing, by the approximately 2%.
Yeah, I don't have those figures exactly in front of me, what you're mentioning, the projections.
I think I may have written them down. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like the expenditures this particular year are going to be about 1.6 million less than the budget, which, when we talk about the difference between the last fiscal year and this property tax increase, it was maybe close to a wash. I'm not sure there. I'd have to get the calculator out.
Yeah, at 1.6 million sounds very high for a budget that, I mean, if you take out the bond repayments, a $7 million budget. So I don't think we've ever seen that much of a surplus over revenue. So I'm not sure exactly which numbers you're seeing.
Yeah, just annualizing your current spend, that's all. And I don't know if
Okay.
you have a significant seasonality to your cost structure. And if you do, that would be helpful to share.
Yeah, we do have some seasonality. So sometimes we have annual subscriptions that renew at different points in the year. I think sometimes the salaries are reflected with a bit of a lag. And like our liability insurance, that's a pretty large expenditure and we haven't seen that yet this year.
So for the prior fiscal year, what was your actual spend relative to your budget?
I don't have those figures in front of me right now. I think we were, I don't even want to guess at this point. I would have to look at the audit and see what the final figures were on that.
Well, thank you for the information you shared. Thank you.
Any other members with comments before we move back?
I was just gonna,
Motion.
I realize we're well over our 5-minute allotted time, but just to hop in and also reiterate the positives, which this is a tax rate decrease. I think that's important for the public to know that there is a dollar increase for the facility, but an overall rate decrease. And I think a lot of that speaks to your leadership that is, we're seeing year over year and the staff that you have. So just wanted to reiterate that appreciation.
Back to member Ward, unless there's any other comments. They had motion, I believe.
Yeah, I'll move approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by member Hendricks. Madam Clerk, if you'd take the electronic vote, please.
All right, the item passes. We just have one nay to announce. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll move to item C under the regular agenda, which will discuss abatement of property tax and also obligation bonds to the city. At this time, Mr. Jurgens.
Mayor, you described it very well. This is something we do every year, and we'll turn it over to our finance director again to give a brief highlight on this.
Thank you, City Manager Jurgens, Mayor, Council, Community. Next slide, please. This is really a housekeeping related action related to the tax levy. Our debt compliance documents basically use the tax levy as collateral. Every year we're required to abate the property tax for the difference between what we're levying and what we're resourcing from other tax revenues. Specifically, for the water bond we just did, those revenues are coming from the water service fees. There's a sales tax that was increased some years ago that's paying off the arena bonds. And so this just abates, it's just a compliance document approved by our council to abate those levy documents so that we stay in compliance with those lending ordinances. All these abatement documents, they're somewhat complicated. They're reviewed by our bond counsel every year. So we reach outside just to make sure we're in compliance related to those documents. Next slide, please. Sorry, I kind of butchered that a little bit. I've done this every year. This year it's a little higher because of the water bond that we just did, the $33 million. All of our debt is clearly detailed in budget book number 2. It shows the remaining payments for both principal and interest for all of our bonds. Obviously, the water bond is not going to be in our 2026 bond document or budget document, but it will be in the 27. So if the community is interested in seeing our debt totals are both in the audit, but the budget really lays them out, shows an amortization, basically an amortization schedule for each and every bond that's currently active and being paid by the city. Next slide, please. And so with that, I recommend the 2025 tax levy abatements be approved. Questions?
Are there questions of members to our director, Member Motney?
I'll move approval of the abatement.
Second.
Motion by Member Motney, seconded by Member Hendricks. And if you take the vote, please.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Councilmember Mosley. The item passes, no nays to announce.
Thank you. Concluding then our regular agenda items this evening, we'll move to our city manager, Mr. Jurgens, discussion report.
Thank you, Mayor. If you could pull my report up, just a couple of slides tonight. Member Lee last week thanked Public Works for their response to the snow event that we had the previous weekend, and I was kicking myself because I had meant to do that as well, but who would have thought Mother Nature gave me another opportunity? And it was a doozy of a storm, and our Public Works Department did a fantastic job. I mean, as soon as they would clear one street, the snow would cover it again, and they were out at 2,000 tons of salt. Is a lot of salt, and that's an expensive amount of salt. But we have no choice but to keep the roads cleared, and they did a great job. But it wasn't just the public works crews, our police officers who responded to hundreds of calls, crashes. Crime doesn't stop just because it's sub-zero and it's blizzard. 5 DUIs over the weekend, so they did an amazing job. Our fire department had a fire in sub-zero temperatures on Sunday morning. And the fire chief was telling us this morning just how difficult it is to handle a fire when it's that cold and the water freezing and the hoses. And then also our water crews who were out, they had 2 large water main breaks that they dealt with. Water meters freezing over. So while we get to, maybe hunker down inside, our crews and our employees truly shine during these moments, and just want to say how thankful I know we all are for them, but to recognize their sacrifice. 24-hour shifts from the public works crews just did an amazing job, and very appreciative of them. Next slide. Last slide is just a thank you to Arts and Entertainment, another sold out show. The Jane Lynch show over the weekend was a sellout at the BCPA. And then just a reminder, we've got a lot of holiday events going on in our downtown and across the community. So be sure to make that a stop. And we are trying to get the message out as much as we can. We have a lot of parking downtown now. We have leased parking lots where people can park. It's convenient. So even though there's a lot of construction, there's also a lot of parking. And so there's really no excuse not to go downtown this holiday season. A lot of great stores, a lot of great stuff going on. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Members of the council with comments. Member Scott.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to say on this, the second night of Hanukkah, I'd like to say Chag Sameach, and that in the face of international pain and violence, that I hope that our local Jewish community can enjoy this season of peace and joy. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Lee.
As city manager, Jeff beat me to the punch this time. So thanks to all the public works for their awesome job. Do we have any data on warming centers and how they're being utilized with especially the frigid temperatures over the weekend?
Yeah, we can get that. I don't. We have been checking in with the Salvation Army. The expanded shelter that this council helped authorize is getting a lot of use, and I'm very proud that the council did that. But we can get information on the warming centers as well.
Member Ward. Member Straza.
Yeah. No, I want to again thank the city staff and just Public Works and everyone that's been involved, fire department, police department, just seeing all the things out there. We're just always paying attention to what's going on. It's like, it's amazing all the things you can get done in such horrible conditions, but thank you. Something else I want to just remind people is, unfortunately, it seems like the 2 weekends, the small business groups have been trying to have the small business, buy local and all that. It's been some pretty rough weather, it seems like. And I think this past weekend was the same for them. I don't know. I thought it was another time they were trying to get people to come out. So if you haven't gone out there, please buy from our local people. They desperately, I think I'm just speaking for them, that they would love to have you come shop at their places and to buy as much as possible before Christmas shows up. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll piggyback what Mike Straza just said in that another thing that got canceled was the Christmas at the Mansions. And I don't want to steal Jenna's thunder because I know she works very closely with David Davis. But that has been rescheduled, and that's going to happen on the 27th of December. So if you have a ticket, it will be valid that date. If you didn't get a ticket because of the weather, hopefully the 27th works out better for you. And again, we have Broadview this year. So there's 3 mansions. So get out if you can. Thanks.
Me.
Just nothing else to contribute. Thank you.
Member Mosley
Nothing else to contribute.
and Member Kearns. Nothing. Okay. Thank you all. And echoing all those comments and just some brief comments on my part, is that today, in fact, many of us were at the retirement reception for Russ Waller, from 25 years plus in engineering and public works and facilities management of the city over his tenure. And we thanked him for that and the very honored, dedicated service that he had. Also, while the snow was going on and the challenges, there were a few that made it out to over 20 people made it to the candy cane drop, which is good to note, as well as the wild lights at the zoo. So the activities were trying to kind of filter through for those that didn't get canceled, but the citizens were very supportive. They could be. I also noted Friday and when I made some travels around town, in particular, prior to the concert, met a couples that were here from Chicago that were down for the concert, that were eating at one of their favorite establishments. I was going to stay at the hotel that evening, and we had a nice visit to think they came from Chicago just for that. And they said, no, we come for other things too in this community. So that certainly was, I think, something that everyone needs to be recognized. And obviously, we wish we could do more of that. But to all that have given above and beyond, as I stopped by the fire department on Sunday to thank the firefighters from the morning fire, thank you for their service. And I don't know they even want to say winter hasn't officially begun yet by calendar. So with that, I need a motion, motions to adjourn.
I'll move.
Second,
Second.
unanimous motion. Aye. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And Happy Hanukkah.